Hello, I'm Garry Stevens, and welcome to the History in the Bible podcast. All the history, in all the books, in all the Bibles. Episode 1.19, Into the Wilderness. The book of Exodus concludes on a triumphant note. The Israelites are encamped at the foot of Mount Sinai. They have escaped the Egyptians. They have their laws, their institutions, and their priests. All is right with the world. Led by God and his prophet Moses, they shall surely take possession of Canaan, the land promised to them. The fourth book in the Pentateuch, Numbers, is the story of how that expectation turned to ashes. The slave generation will fail to meet the physical and spiritual challenges. They will spend 40 years with their heart's desire just out of reach. Only their children will enter the promised land. Numbers is named after its title in the Septuagint, arithmoi, after the census reported in its first chapter. That name reflects a title also used by Jews in the early Roman Empire. The modern Hebrew name is Bamidbar, in the wilderness. That is a much more apt description. The first 10 of its 36 chapters are set at the final encampment at Sinai, continuing the narrative from Exodus. The middle section of the book describes the generation-long hiatus the Israelites were forced to take. A recurring theme of this section is the Israelites' constant complaints and minor rebellions. They lack faith, trust, and courage. Moses and God alternate in losing patience with the Israelites, but each time one convinces the other to forgive. The relationship between the two is the most intimate depicted in the entire Tanakh, as they work together to parent a petulant child. Moses becomes the paradigm of the classical prophet, performing a double duty. When he talks to the Israelites, he castigates them for their lack of faith and ingratitude. When he talks to God, he pleads for mercy. The final section of Numbers describes preparations for the campaign to take Canaan. By that point, the entire generation that had left Egypt is dead, save for Moses, Joshua, and Caleb. The book is unclear as to where the Israelites spent the 40 years in the wilderness. Most of Numbers is attributed to the peace source, which locates the Israelites' lengthy misery in the northern Sinai, the wilderness of Zin, near a city called Kadesh Barnea. That would be due south of Canaan. The J and E fragments in Numbers say the Israelites stayed only a short time at Kadesh Barnea. J and E hold that the people spent their 40 years in the desert regions of Edom and Moab, south and east of the Dead Sea. Confused about the geography? Check out my maps at www.historyinthebible.com. Whatever the case, Numbers is firm that the Israelites finished their years in the wilderness east of the Jordan River at Mount Nebo, opposite the city of Jericho. The promised land was a few short kilometres away. Kilometres doesn't sound very biblical, does it? Call it a measly 50,000 cubits from Jericho. Amidst this narrative, the book includes more law codes, intricate details of the desert camp's construction, and further information on the duties of the Levites. For good measure, it throws in some demographic information with census lists. Indeed, Numbers starts with a census. As usual, the only people worth counting are men of military age. Numbers chapter 1 gives a total of 603,550 warriors, comparable to the figure quoted in Exodus as leaving Egypt. Exodus is keen to impress on us how the Israelites multiplied greatly during their time in Egypt. My back-of-the-envelope calculation shows that they grew at about 2.5% each year while in the land of the Nile. The rest of the Middle East could barely manage a 0.1% annual growth rate. The Israelites managed to grow at 25 times the rate of their neighbours. Had they maintained that prodigious fecundity, by the time of King David, the Israelites would have boasted a male population of 100 million men. Since the world population at the time is estimated at somewhere between 50 and 110 million, you have to wonder. The Levites are not counted because they are not liable for military duty. Lucky Levites. They don't have to fight. They don't have to plough the land or herd sheep. They just have to transport the tent of meeting and conduct sacrifices. The Levites get their own detailed census in chapter 4, and there only mature men are counted. To give you some of the flavour of the book of Numbers, here is a quote about the duties of one sub-tribe of the Levites. Quote, Numbers 4:21. Yahweh spoke to Moses, "Take a census of the Gershonites also, by their ancestral house and by their clans. Record them from the age of 30 years up to the age of 50, all who are subject to service in the performance of tasks of the tent of meeting. These are the duties of the Gershonite clans as to labour and porterage. They shall carry the cloths of the tabernacle, the tent of meeting with its covering, the covering of dolphin skin that is on top of it, and the screen for the entrance of the tent of meeting, the hangings of the enclosure, the screen at the entrance of the gate of the enclosure that surrounds the tabernacle, the cords thereof, and the slaughter site, and all their service equipment and all their accessories, and they shall perform the service." End quote. The Israelites' march is organised along military lines, each tribe in its place around the tent. Quote, Numbers 1:52. The Israelites shall encamp troop by troop, each man with his division, and each under his standard. The Levites, however, shall camp around the tabernacle of the pact, that wrath may not strike the Israelite community. The Levites shall stand guard around the tabernacle of the pact. Numbers 2:1. Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "The Israelites shall camp each with his standard, under the banners of their ancestral house. They shall camp around the tent of meeting. Camped on the front or east side, the standard of the division of Judah, troop by troop. Chieftain of the Judites, Nahshon, son of Amminadab. His troop, as enrolled, 74,600. Camping next to it, the tribe of Issachar. Chieftain of the Issacharites, Netanel, son of Zuar. His troop, as enrolled, 54,400. End quote. Numbers lists in great detail the names of all the chieftains. What is interesting is that not one of these names is theophoric. By that I mean a personal name that includes some part of God's name, such as Yahu, Yo, or Yehu. Classic examples would be Yehoshua, Joshua, Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah, Yeshayahu, Isaiah. Theophoric names were common in later Israel, but with the notable exception of Joshua, few are to be found in the book of Numbers. Numbers enumerates the list of tribes in no less than 8 separate places. In 4 of these places, Levi is not counted as a tribe. In 2 chapters, though, Levi is counted as a tribe, for a total of 13. In chapter 10, no mention is made of Levi, which is replaced by its 3 component clans. In Genesis and Exodus, Joseph is recounted a tribe. In Numbers, Joseph disappears, replaced by his sons Ephraim and Manasseh. By the end of chapter 4, the Israelites' military order of march has been established, and the details for the organisation of the tent of meeting. Because the authors just can't help themselves, they interrupt the narrative to lay down some laws to protect from impurity the mobile city that is the Israelite camp. And nothing cries impurity more than adultery. Chapter 5 prescribes an elaborate procedure for suspected cases of adultery. It starts with, quote, Numbers 5:12. If any man's wife has gone astray and broken faith with him, and she keeps secret the fact that she has defiled herself without being forced, and there is no witness against her, but a fit of jealousy comes over him, the man shall bring his wife to the priest. Quote, in the Torah, adultery is sex between a married woman and a man who is not her husband. Married men were legally incapable of committing adultery. They committed no crime by having sex with women they were not married to. Female adulterers, it was held, defied their husband's will and seduced men for sexual and emotional needs. These female failings were understood as metaphors for the Jewish people betraying God because they failed to submit to God's will or because they lusted after other things. It was also held that men only seduced women as a power trip, not through lust. Right. So they committed no crime against God. You could not make this up, could you? Anyway, the wounded husband who merely suspects adultery and who admits there are no witnesses nonetheless compels his wife to present herself before a priest. Quote, Numbers 5:16. The priest shall bring her forward and have her stand before Yahweh. The priest shall take sacral water in an earthen vessel. The priest is to make the woman drink the water of bitterness that induces the spell. Once he has made her drink the water, if she has defiled herself by breaking faith with her husband, the spell-inducing water shall enter into her to bring on bitterness, so that her belly shall distend and her thigh shall sag. And the woman shall become a curse among her people. This is the ritual in cases where a fit of jealousy comes over a man and he is wrought up over his wife. The man shall be clear of guilt, but that woman shall suffer for her guilt. End quote. Chapter 6 starts with the requirements one must fulfill to become a Nazirite, a person who dedicates themselves to God for a limited period, becoming a sort of lay priest. Nazirites had to refrain from alcohol, were forbidden to cut their hair, and were not allowed contact with the dead. Samson was the most famous Nazirite. See the significance of the hair thing? The chapter concludes with the priestly blessing, which is a part of synagogue liturgy today. It has been found on silver amulets in graves dating to the 6th century BC. Rather than using the sacred name of God found in the text, I've used the form recited in the liturgy. This is the Schocken Bible translation. Quote, Numbers 6:22. Adonai spoke to Moses, Speak to Aaron and his sons. Thus shall you bless the children of Israel. Say to them, Adonai bless you and keep you. Adonai shine his face upon you and favour you. Adonai lift up his face toward you and grant shalom. So are they to put my name upon the children of Israel, that I myself may bless them. End quote. In chapters 9 and 10, the Israelites celebrate Passover, precisely 1 year after leaving Egypt. They decamp, joyously heading to Canaan. God provides them with the Bronze Age version of sat-nav. By day, he provides a cloud over the tabernacle, and by night, a cloud of fire. Where the cloud goes, so go the Israelites. Where the cloud stops, so do they. 3 days after leaving Mount Sinai, the Israelites start complaining. Big time. Quote, Numbers 11:1. The people took to complaining bitterly before Yahweh. Yahweh heard and was incensed. A fire of Yahweh broke out against them, ravaging the outskirts of the camp. The people cried out to Moses. Moses prayed to Yahweh, and the fire died down. The riffraff in their midst felt a gluttonous craving, And then the Israelites wept and said, "If only we had meat to eat. We remember the fish that we used to eat free in Egypt, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions and the garlic. Now our gullets are shriveled. There is nothing at all, nothing but this manna to look to." A wind from Yahweh started up, swept quail from the sea, and strewed them over the camp. The people set to gathering quail all that day and night, and all the next day. The meat was still between their teeth, not yet chewed, when the anger of Yahweh blazed forth against the people, and Yahweh struck the people with a very severe plague. End quote. The children of Israel grouse and grumble. They whine, they are peevish, and they are ungrateful. In response, God sets the gold standard for abusive parents throughout history. He punishes his petulant but powerless people with plague and pestilence. The Israelites will complain a further 6 times in Numbers, and each time God will respond with unremitting and remorseless punishment. Now, I've just said that the Israelites complain. Most Jewish and Christian commentaries use a much stronger word, rebel. The next chapter, 12, reports a second complaint, this time against Moses by his brother and sister. In the books of Leviticus and Deuteronomy, books traditionally ascribed to Moses, Moses insists that foreign wives are forbidden to Israelite men. But it seems those rules don't apply to the man himself. Quote, Numbers 12:1. Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Cushite women he had married. They said, "Has Yahweh spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us as well?" End quote. The last we heard, Moses had married Zipporah, the daughter of Jethro the Midianite from Arabia. Cushite was a term reserved for African blacks, and certainly not Semites. Was this some new wife? We just don't know. God summons the siblings to a meeting at the tabernacle and resoundingly smacks them down. Quote, Numbers 12:6. My servant Moses, he is trusted throughout my household. With him I speak mouth to mouth, plainly and not in riddles. And he beholds the likeness of Yahweh. How then did you not shrink from speaking against my servant Moses? Still incensed with them, Yahweh departed. As the cloud withdrew from the tent, there was Miriam stricken with snow-white scales. When Aaron turned toward Miriam, he saw that she was stricken with scales. End quote. Miriam is struck with psoriasis for her attitude. But yet again, the feckless Aaron walks away scot-free. This guy is Teflon. The Israelites are now at Kadesh Barnea, on the very southern outskirts of Canaan. God directs Moses to send 12 spies into the land, one from each tribe. The spies return after 40 days, scared out of their wits. Quote, Numbers 13:26. They went straight to Moses and Aaron. This is what they told him. We came to the land you sent us to. It does indeed flow with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. However, the people who inhabit the country are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We cannot attack that people, for it is stronger than we. The country that we traversed and scouted is one that devours its settlers. All the people that we saw in it are men of great size. We saw the Nephilim there, and we looked like grasshoppers to ourselves, and so we must have looked to them. In the J.E. version of the story, only Caleb of the tribe of Judah brings back an optimistic report. In the P version, he is joined by Joshua, Yehoshua, of the tribe of Ephraim. These two attempt to calm the anguished Israelites. In the Schocken Bible translation, quote, Numbers 14:8. If Yahweh is pleased with us, he will bring us to the land and give it to us, a land that is flowing with milk and honey. But against Yahweh do not rebel. And you, do not be afraid of the people of the land, for food for us are they." End quote. A rather sinister expression that, food for us are they. The Israelites refuse to be comforted and launch into their third rebellion, demanding tickets for the next donkey train back to Egypt. God takes umbrage and threatens to strike them with pestilence. Moses sweet-talks his way out by appealing to God's vanity. Quote, Numbers 14:13. "But Moses said to Yahweh, When the Egyptians hear the news, they will tell it to the inhabitants of that land. If you then slay this people to a man, the nations who have heard your fame will say, It must be because Yahweh was powerless to bring that people into the land he promised them. Therefore, I pray, let my Lord's forbearance be great, as you have declared, saying, Yahweh, slow to anger and abounding in kindness, forgiving iniquity and transgression, yet not remitting all punishment, but visiting the iniquity of fathers upon children, upon the third and fourth generations. Pardon, I pray, the iniquity of this people according to your great kindness, as you have forgiven this people ever since Egypt." End quote. God promptly shows just how slow he is to anger by killing the 10 pessimistic spies. He then demonstrates his forgiveness by proclaiming that none who left Egypt will live to enter Canaan. Then follows a confused short story. The Israelites leave Moses eating bagels back at the home camp, while they decide to march against the Amalekites and the Canaanites. Without Moses and the ark, the Israelites are defeated. At this point, the narrative breaks off with some divine instructions about sacrifices. It also throws in a distressing story about a man stoned to death for gathering wood on the Sabbath. The narrative resumes with the fourth and most serious rebellion so far, a double rebellion indeed. Quote, Numbers 16:1. "Now Korah betook himself along with Datan and Aviram, descendants of Reuben, to rise up against Moses, together with 250 Israelites, chieftains of the community. They combined against Moses and Aaron and said to them, You have gone too far, for all the community are holy, all of them, and Yahweh is in their midst. Why then do you raise yourselves above Yahweh's congregation?" Korah was a Levite, and moreover, he was Moses' cousin. Datan and Aviram were of the tribe of Reuben, the firstborn son of Israel. God comes down emphatically against a religious democracy in favour of an appointed elite. Martin Luther must have skipped this story. As usual, God smites. Long quote, Numbers 16:27. "Now Datan and Aviram had come out, and they stood at the entrance of their tents, with their wives, their children, and their little ones. And Moses said, By this you shall know that it was Yahweh who sent me to do all these things, that they are not of my own devising. Scarcely had he finished speaking all these words, when the ground under them burst asunder, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up with their households, all Korah's people and all their possessions. They went down alive into Sheol, with all that belonged to them. The earth closed over them, and they vanished from the midst of the congregation. All Israel around them fled at their shrieks, for they said, The earth might swallow us. And a fire went forth from Yahweh and consumed the 250 men." End quote. This is the first time in the Bible that some sort of afterlife is postulated, in a place called Sheol. Sheol seems to have been the same dreary place that the Greeks envisaged as Hades. It pops up again a few times in the Old Testament, but only in passing. Well-developed concepts of the afterlife only appear in the Second Temple literature in Hellenistic times. I will discuss these in later episodes. The story of this rebellion makes 2 points, one minor and one major. The minor point is to provide yet another reason why Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, never achieved his rightful place as head of the Israelites. Reuben already has 2 black marks against him. He had sex with one of his father's wives, and he wanted to dump his brother Joseph in a pit for wild animals to find. Now we have a third. The major point is to demonstrate that holiness must be one. Korah is a Levite, but he is not a priest of the family of Aaron. God has granted the holiest offices to Aaron and his descendants, not to the Levites en masse. Korah's complaint is a challenge to God himself, and we know who wins those challenges. The affable God of Genesis is long gone. From now on, the world is a strict hierarchy of holiness. At the human pinnacle are the priests of Aaron's line. Then come the Levites, then the Israelite masses, then the rest of humanity. Only the holiest can approach God, the source of all holiness. Numbers chapter 17 recounts the Israelites' 5th rebellion. Just one day after the death of Korah, they complain to Moses and Aaron. These people just do not learn. Neither God, nor Moses, nor Aaron will have a bar of it. Quote, Numbers 17:8. When Moses and Aaron reached the tent of meeting, Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, "Remove yourselves from this community, that I may annihilate them in an instant." They fell on their faces. Then Moses said to Aaron, "Take the firepan and put on it fire from the slaughter site. Add incense and take it quickly to the community." Aaron took it as Moses had ordered and ran to the midst of the congregation, where the plague had begun among the people. He put on the incense and made expiation for the people. Those who died of the plague came to 14,700, aside from those who died on account of Korah. End quote. God begins to strike the Israelites with a plague, but is distracted when he smells some incense coming his way. Thanks to the brothers' quick actions, the Israelites lose a mere 14,700 souls. A mere 14,700. We conclude the Israelites' wanderings in the wilderness in the next episode of the History in the Bible podcast. Thanks for listening.